Welcome back to the GSTL. We had a little bit of a hiatus for Korean Thanksgiving, also known as Chuseok, but now we are back, and as usual, it's me and Kaldor.
We are back with a double day. We have not only the match right now at 10, but also another one later on at 6 p.m. Korean Standard Time. And both games today are going to be really exciting.
Definitely so. Starting things off, we have AZUBU versus Axiom-Acer, two extremely top-tier teams, and they're sending out the big guns right away, with Crank coming out first to meet Symbol. Pretty crazy first player picks.
Yeah, I talked to Crank yesterday a little bit, and he was preparing for Symbol like the entire day, just practicing and as much as he could, preparing for his opponent here. And both teams so far don't have a single loss in the GSTL. So this is going to be the first time for one of them who will prevail and take that first rank in the standings and take the 3-0.
Yeah, that's what we're here to find out. There's Innovation, the newest addition to Acer's team lineup, and he's already gotten himself an all-kill this season. I don't think he'll be getting one today, but he definitely will come into play at some point if Axiom-Acer needs him.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see that Symbol actually is the starting player for Team AZUBU here. In the past, he was more the closer for his team, usually the last one to come out. But already in the last two matches, they kind of shown that they want to have him out a little bit faster, that they want him to get the points here. And the matchup that we're seeing him today is not really his strongest.
Yeah, not exactly. Zerg vs. Pro has definitely not been Symbol's strongest suit in the past, but I really like what you're saying. They've been wanting to send him out a little bit earlier, because you send him out earlier, then you don't rely on him later as the last player, because sometimes they would have him out as the last player, but he would have to beat too many players, and he just couldn't come through the third or the fourth one. But sending him out earlier, get some early kills, but sending him out first, that's a totally different story here.
Yeah, coming out first, of course, always has the little bit of a disadvantage for you, that your opponent can prepare for you a lot better. Symbol was always one of those all-around talents that he could throw out at any time in the team match and then get a couple of points. But right now we have him as a starting player, so the AZUBU coach really wants him to just gather a few points right off the bat.
Yeah, definitely so. You know, lead with a good start, get that momentum going. Let's take a look at last week's, of course, results and of our scores for these teams.
Yeah, a little bit of an idea of what happened the last time. Today, of course, AZUBU versus Axiom-Acer. But last week, we had in the match between StarTale and Seoul a 4-3 victory for StarTale, with the bench taking down Hiva in the last game.
Yeah, a very close match. It was down to the wire there. Avenge taking the final game against Hiva. Pretty epic series. If you haven't watched it, definitely go check out the VOD.
Especially the game between Avenge and Hiva was really interesting. Avenge was kind of successful with an early attack against the third base of Hiva and then carried the momentum from there. So a really good plays by the StarTale Protoss player.
Yeah, really nicely done. And our current standings, we have, like you said before, our two winners playing today, Axiom and AZUBU. StarTale and Seoul and FX Open at the bottom there. StarTale 1-1. And of course, later on today, we'll have Seoul against FX Open, the two losers teams. So one of them going to be joining StarTale there with the 1-1, or rather the 1-2, I should say.
Really important here as well is the +6 indicator that we have for Axiom-Acer right now. Innovations all-kill, of course, contributed quite a lot to this. And with that, they are in a really decent spot. If they are able to win it today, then they would not only at least get an indicator of +1 in addition to the +6 that they already have, but the 3-0 would make it very difficult for other teams to surpass them in the season.
Yep. HOT6 banner little thing over there. What I was trying to say there. There's a banner little thing over there for HOT6 as a sign. HOT6 are a sponsor. Here's the breakdown of races and where they are in WCS.
You can of course see that Axiom-Acer is relying on a single Zerg, and Scarlet currently not being in Korea is definitely an issue. But just in general, 3 players in the Premier League. We have 3 for AZUBU and 5 for Axiom-Acer, that is. So especially AZUBU has a pretty well-rounded lineup if you just look at it. 3 Terrans, 3 Zergs, 2 Protoss players, so they have an answer for all eventualities.
Definitely true. Axiom-Acer only having 2 Protosses. Don't count them out though. They're Crank and Alicia, really strong Protosses, people that you can rely on in a pinch, especially Alicia, really good for a snipe. Crank, a good all-around player. He's a starting player for today. And Innovation, he might come out. You always have to prepare for him.
We saw him against Seoul as well. Axiom-Acer sent him out, and he was able to deliver, took down the final opponents. A good job there. But here we have the AZUBU lineup, with Symbol being our starting player today, but he's not the only one that could deliver points onto the scoreboard for his team today. Sleep, Patience, we've seen him as well. Supernova, Senna, of course, a player that we haven't seen too much yet this season. Nej and Vines round up the roster. pretty strong lineup that they have there, even after the losses that they had to suffer at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, sending out really, really early Symbol might scare a lot of people, but as long as he can get a few points, that'll be good for AZUBU. They still have players like Supernova, who's always notably sleeping in the background, to rely on. I swear, has he ever been on camera where he's not sleeping? I'm trying to think of a time.
Not even in the old Mukdom days did we have him wide awake. He's always taking a nap when he's not in the booth.
And here's, of course, the Axiom-Acer lineup. Alicia and Crank being the only Protosses. And Innovation, newest roster, he's good.
You can see with the profile picture of Total Biscuit of John Bain there that he's already aiming for the title.
Yes.
He's staring off into the distance. He wants to grab that GSTL title, and he might as well be able to do it with this team.
Yeah.
Here we have, of course, the players, and it's going to be an interesting day.
It certainly will be. I think the pace is definitely going to be set by the first game. Because if Symbol loses, then AZUBU is going to be a really uncomfortable position. If Crank loses, they haven't lost as much momentum, but they lose, you know, that motivation. That you have the team captain, the leader of your team, going to the booth first, and he loses. That definitely can get into your mind a little bit as a team.
One of the things, on the other hand, that was really impressive the last time that AZUBU played is that they were relying only on Patience, Vines, and Senna, and able to win against FX Open with a 4-2. Symbol and Supernova, they were not in Korea at the time. They were at a foreign tournament and could not participate. And still, AZUBU was able to win it. So we could really see that even when Supernova and Symbol are not there to deliver, they have players that can do that for them. And that might exactly be what they're relying on today, or what they will have to rely on if Symbol is taken out by Crank.
Yeah. There's Crank himself at the front. And this match just is already so heated based on our starting players. Symbol really being a big gambit they put out here, because yes, he is a strong player and he will likely eliminate multiple players. You know, if you're the AZUBU coach, you got to be thinking that. But if he does happen to fall for any reason, that puts him in a bad situation. And already, of course, as your opponent, as Axiom-Acer, you can study Symbol because you've known about him for a while. You know he's the guy you got to prepare for first. So Crank could have some crazy builds prepared for him.
And Crank, as I said earlier, he practiced a lot. When I talked to him, he said that he was practicing already all day and he feels quite confident. He didn't come out once this season so far. And for Crank, the same thing is true that we said about Symbol earlier. The matchup in general is not his best. Both players are actually below a 50% win ratio, with Symbol, of course, a lot more matches under his belt than Crank. But when they met each other back in, I think it was May, Crank was able to win a best of one against Symbol already. So this is definitely something that might give him the upper hand here.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, Symbol has played a lot more games. He's played in Code S, he's played in WSS Premier League, and Wings of Liberty, and in Heart of the Storm. He just has more experience overall. He was the head of TSL, and now he's kind of the head of AZUBU when it comes to top-notch players. So he definitely has a lot of experience in the booth.
What we saw there by Alicia is actually one of the things that I always find really funny about Korea. That the gesture to wave someone towards you looks like the gesture of like shushing someone away in the Western world. It's always so funny to me. Every single time I meet a friend and he's like doing like this, I'm like, what? Why do you want me to leave? I don't get it. But in Korea, that just means come here. So it's like, that's something that always kind of blows my mind at first when I look at it. I'm like, what is he doing? And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, it's Korea.
Yeah, it can really be confusing, that's for sure. There's some gestures here that a little bit different from the Western world that I've come to learn, you've come to learn.
Yeah, especially when you're German. I mean, I mentioned that when I first came to Korea, there are a couple of things that are really interesting. For example, the Korean word for yes it exists in German as a bit of a slang word for no. So at first it was like really interesting when I did something here and everyone was just saying like nah, 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 and I'm like, what, why?
Well, it's like when I went to Paris, apparently like the slang word for yes is kind of like, sounds almost like way, like in Korean, so I got so confused. I'm like, what is no, that's not Korean, okay. What? Someone answer the phone and say way, which is kind of like when you answer the phone in Korean, you just answer kind of like, what's up? Like, what do you need? So that would confuse me quite a bit when I was in Paris.
Yeah, language can be quite funny. But well, today we're focusing a little bit more on the two teams. Keep in mind that this is not only the only GSTL match that we have today. We have the two winners going up against each other first, but then later on we have two teams that didn't win a single match so far this season, so they really have to get a victory. And that's going to be FX Open against Seoul. It's going to start after this team match at 6 PM Korean Standard Time. That's roughly 5 hours from now, so keep that in mind.
Now here is Symbol. He's in the Premier League. In WCS points, he's currently 24th. And in GSTL alone, he has 24 and 11, nearly a 70% win ratio. This guy's a beast. usually comes out last, and he's the guy who cleans things up, but today he's coming out first.
Yep. Going up first against the Protoss player for Team Axiom-Acer. We today have Crank as the starting player. The AZUBU coach confident as usual in his player's ability to take this match. The last time Symbol met Crank, he lost the game. It was the best of one. Crank a little bit late in the booth.
Yeah, a little bit late, I suppose. Get in there.
I was wondering why we didn't get the shot earlier.
There he is. I guess it's because he's, being the coach of the team as well, he's got to take care of some things. So, Crank is a good player. Never underestimate him. He's one of the most successful players to kind of run a team and coach a team while being a player himself. And he's really helped to motivate that team that he's part of. Small team, Total Biscuit and Jenna made a team. It's a really strong team. It's a little bit smaller than most Korean teams, but he's definitely kept them all together and still managed to be a great Protoss player at the same time. It's incredible, really.
Yeah. Ryung on the bench. He wants to get a couple of wins under his belt, of course. He was the most successful individual player within the team league last season, and he wants to get that title once again. But so far, Innovation is leading the ranks here, so in order to surpass him, he will have to come out today and get a couple of victories.
Yeah. Speaking of that, there is a prize pool for that, as well as for ceremonies, for those of you guys who did not know. So if you do crazy ceremonies, you may be able to get some prize money out of that.
And a couple of players already announced that they really want to get that award, that they are already practicing a few ceremonies at the team houses and want to wait for future victories to just perform them. So we can look forward to something this season.
Definitely so. Yunsu is the first map, our barren and grassy map. It's cut in half. Protoss versus Zerg. We're going to find out who takes his first game and gets momentum very soon here.
Yeah, Protoss versus Zerg, our opening matchup here, the GSTL Season 2 2013. And we have for AZUBU Symbol as the starting player, whereas Axiom-Acer is relying on Cranky in the opening game. A player that we haven't seen this season just yet. Let's see what he can do against a strong Zerg player from Team AZUBU, the GSTL. Powerful.
When I step to the floor, bringing you that fuel source fresh from the core. Right mind, thinking strong, you like iodine. The blueprint, these huge quotes that my mind designed.
Starting to the bottom left of Yongsu, we currently have the Zerg player for Team AZUBU, the starting player. It is
AZUBU Symbol.
We rarely see him come out first. This time he's the opening player. Most times we see him as a third or fourth player for his team. He's up against the Protoss. To the top right for Team Axiom-Acer we have, in green,
Axiom Prank.
Pylon in the main base. And this indicates, of course, most likely a gateway span, although we could see just a forge on the main build as well.
Yeah, occasionally we see the forge in the main, but these days the gateway in the main base is much more common. And, well, just looking at the two players, we talked about it a little bit in the pre-game talk. Crank currently at the win ratio against Korean players offline with 40% only in this matchup, 2 wins and 3 losses regarding the map wins. He lost against Jaedong and against Kangho, but he took a win against Symbol. And that's, of course, one of the things that might maybe give him the upper hand here. But Symbol is definitely the player that has more experience and also more exposure. He already played 29 maps against Protoss players, against Korean Protoss players, that is, offline, and he won 45% of them.
Yeah, he's got a lot of experience. Something interesting to note that I noticed early on about Crank's play here is he had a probe rallied to where the pylon was, as if he was going to make a gateway there or a forge, and then he re-rallied it to the minerals and made 3 more. So you could see it's like he just decided that he wanted to make a nexus. He had planned originally to make something else in the main base, but he's changed his mind. Either that or he originally planned to do this and then was like, oh yeah, I gotta stick to the plan here.
Yeah, and as a result, we see now the forge in the main base, one of the options that he had there, not going for the gateway first, whereas on the other hand, Symbol with a forge, with his own hatch already, having a drone down, just looking for the probe, making sure that there's no pylon being placed down, that there's no cannon rush or anything like it. And he actually goes for a really fast third base as well, before the 4th-minute mark.
Yeah, and he sees the Nexus timing with his Overlord, of course, as well as the gateway here. So he's going to know, okay, you went for Forge, you're really safe, but this third base works out for me. And Symbol can be very happy with his opening right now. Doesn't have to take gas for a while. He knows there's no gateway pressure coming his way anytime soon.
This is actually like a really good position that we currently have here for Symbol. His third base was scouted, but it's exactly the opening that you want to go for if your opponent goes into a Nexus first play. So he has a very fast third base on his own. The only thing that I would really like to see is maybe have a drone or an Overlord scouting the third, because there is always the chance that it gets cannon. That's actually something that Crank could have done here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If that happens, then that's a disaster. You get some links over there, you have to cancel your hatchery potentially. That's a really good point. That is one oversight that he definitely had there.
Yeah, that's one of the options that we just had, because he already saw the third base. He scouted it with the probe, and then he had the option of just going for a cannon there. If you do that, the Zerglings will most likely not arrive in time to make a difference there at the third with the timings that we had here. So in this case, Crank decides to not go for the cannons. It's an option that he has, but if it fails, then of course he loses a couple of minerals in the early game and also time that he needs, like his timings won't be as smooth anymore. But it would definitely have been an option, and Symbol is of course really happy that that's not the case, because he would have likely lost his base because of it.
Yeah. Crank transitions into Stargate here after doing a full wall at the front of his base, so no links coming in, no run-bys either. Actually, that's not a full wall. That tricked me there. I think that's not a full wall. I'm pretty sure the probes can get through there.
Yeah, didn't get a second look there. We have double gas now at the natural, and one of the things that Crank can also achieve with the Stargate tech that he's currently starting is he should be able to shield the tech against the Overlord Scout, since he has a really good positioning for the Stargate. He already has a couple of pylons at the edges of his own main base, so he will always see an Overlord moving in and can then just use the sentries and later on Stalkers to take down the Overlords. And let's see what exactly Crank is going to do with it. Is he waiting with the Phoenixes, or is he showing them right off the bat?
Looks like he's showing them. He's got one rally to an Overlord. Overlord here going to be denied by a sentry. And he makes sure that he sends the sentry right back to the wall, because we've seen in the past some of his Overlords can bait sentries out and lead to disasters. But the Overlords are going to know very soon about the Phoenixes. He makes only one, though, and shows one, so he may switch things up and be a little bit tricky here.
Yeah, at the same time, Symbol is in a position where he's just droning up. He has 2 Zerglings on the map. That's all that he has. He's just scouting with them. He's not doing anything else but just droning up like a madman on 3 bases. And it's actually like incredible. If you get away with being this greedy with the scouting information that he has, it's kind of justified. Then you can just go into such a strong mid game that it's very difficult for the Protoss player to withstand this much pressure.
You know, we see the Void Ray coming out, so that droning that you're talking about here is something that I think Crank anticipates, because he's going to take a fast third and use the Void Rays to defend it. So he takes the aggressive third closer to his opponent. So he wants to be able to attack and defend a lot easier that way. He's clearing up more Overlords right now with his Phoenixes. But a lot of drones, you're right, have Symbol. He's gotten away with a lot of those already. 26 Lings on the way. He really wants to force a cancel on his third. He saw it with his Overlord.
It looks like Hydra Ling from him, and there's the Hydra then immediately throwing that down once the Pillar attack on Lair is done. The +1 attack upgrade already started. The Zerglings on the way, trying to force a cancel at the third. Maybe not able to pull that off, but with Hydra Ling, just in general, against what we currently have on the map for Crank, that's a very, very strong composition, even when there's the +1 attack upgrade for the Zealots out there.
I think he will be able to force cancel. The Nexus is not very far underway. He only has...
There is no speed, by the way. That's something... You know, that might actually have been an oversight. He might have forgotten that. There's always the option of the Zerg player just getting his lair tech a little bit faster and rushing out the tech, but going into the +1 attack upgrade for the Hydralists without getting speed for the Zerglings, it looks like he just forgot the upgrade, and that makes him... That puts him into a spot where he can't take down that Nexus.
Yeah, he can't. And, you know, I saw no speed on the production tab. I thought it was done, but it turns out he just doesn't have it. And going to that Nexus with slow Lings, Nexus not full health, it was 3/4 health, but the cannon wasn't ready. He definitely had enough Lings that if he could have gotten this round, he could have taken the Nexus down. Now, the Nexus is up essentially for free. He has a few Void Rays out. He's transitioning into Charge, interestingly enough, rather than trying to get any Robotics tech out for those Hydralists. So we'll see how that works out for him.
The Charge upgrade, I actually kind of like it. Against the Hydras, it's always awesome if you can rely on a huge number of Zealots and then just charge in addition with the Void Rays that he's currently building. That's actually working quite well. The time that he needs to get the Colossi tech out there is just something that I don't think he really has. And with the Chrono Boost alone, he will be able to get the Charge upgrade a little bit faster. So if you're in the situation, it's a really good choice for him. He expects an attack from Symbol, so he's already preparing for it. But the Zerg player for AZUBU is also getting that 4th base and the Spire tech. He could switch into Mutalisks at some point, which is really good. Like, he's not going to get corrupted against the Void Rays.
These rocks really buying Crank a lot of time, and this is exactly the time that he needs. Another Void Ray on the way. He's trying to get that Temple Archives out for Storm. Charge is almost done. He can buy time with Force Fields as well here. He has a few sentries. I really like Crank's position here. I do not think Symbol is going to be able to break through. However, like you said, the Spire is finishing up. He's got that 4th hatchery, so he doesn't actually really have to commit here. He's just poking a little bit, trying to scare Crank and make him run back and forth. You're playing tennis a little bit.
He's not going up that ramp, not against the Force Fields. That's just overdoing it, especially with the small force that he has here. On the other hand, if Crank is up against Mutalisk, if Symbol decides to tech switch it up here, then the Storm upgrade that he has soon available is something that he can really use against them. So Crank is doing a really, really good build.
Yeah, it's very safe against almost all angles here. Few Hydras poking at the assimilators. I like this because he can easily walk away before the Force Fields are there, then get the Concave at the bottom of the ramp, making it impossible for Crank to go for the chase. That is a lot of Hydralisks. That's 25 of them, so yes, it will get killed in a straight-up fight with good Force Fields, but if you can pick off a unit here or there, definitely going to be worth it for him. So that's why he keeps running back and forth. He's really trying to tax the multitasking of Crank here.
Yeah, and once again, moving in, taking down the pylon, taking down the cannon, trying to aim for the cybernetic score, and that's something that he will definitely get. Question is, how many of these units will he be able to save? Because now suddenly he's not only in range of those Void Rays, but the Zealots are also charging in, and they're dismantling those Hydras.
Those Hydras got crushed. The +2 Zealots with charge just destroying them there. The Mutalisk tech switch is on, but like you said, he can get Storm easily, he can add more Phoenixes in, and Mutalisk is not going to be a huge problem for Crank.
Yeah, he already added the first Archon and he's switching now into Phoenixes, so at this point, I feel that right now the Mutalisk can actually do a lot if he just magic boxes correctly, but then later on down the road, if Crank is able to just, like, doesn't have a Mothership core with the army, but if Crank is able to survive a little bit longer, he should be able to get the counters out.
Yeah, he doesn't know Mutalisks are coming for sure yet. He's expecting them, but he hasn't really made a ton of cans. Not as many cans as he would need in a base trade. Nice pick off of that Muta coming out of the egg there.
He has to magic box those 2 Archons, but he's just going for the race. He's going for the race, and you know, I'm not quite sure if he can actually make this work.
The Protoss army is just so much bigger than his, but if he can outmaneuver his opponent repeatedly, maybe, just maybe, he can make it work. He's killing a lot here in the main base.
He's killing quite a bit, but the Mothership Core is still there. Doesn't have the resources, or I should say the energy, to drop another Nexus Cannon. But that's something that we could see a little bit later on with another Warp in though. And even those Phoenixes alone can already do a little bit of damage, trying to bait those Mutalisks into the range of the cannon. And here come the Warp-ins with more Archons, or even just the Stalkers. He should be able to defend against the Mutalisks without a problem at all.
Yeah, Probe's here a little bit vulnerable, but he goes for the Zealots instead. And you know, the Cybernetics core sniped right after those Stalkers are made. That's a big problem. There goes down here, and there's the GG. He can't hold.
Yep. With 100 supply advantage now for Crank, the Zerg player has to yield, and Axiom-Acer once again taking the first win in a clan war.
And this is terrible for AZUBU. They've lost Symbol, their best player. And it was a great build by Crank. Maybe Ling Speed was forgotten. You know, that's definitely something that we can't say for sure, but it seemed that that was definitely a distinct possibility, because if those Lings that he made 26 or so all had speed, he probably would have been able to force a cancel on that Nexus.
The moment where Symbol kind of lost the game was when all of his Hydralisks got eliminated, though. He was trying to just poke a little bit, go for guerrilla tactics here, move in, do some damage, and then move out again. But Crank was there, and his Zealots with the speed, with the charge, they just charged in, took everything down, the force field, made sure that the Hydras couldn't escape, and Symbol lost everything here, and way too much.
Yeah, I mean, he tried to get the core, and he got it, but after that, we saw only Zealots and Archons come out, so he didn't even need the core, and the other tech was already there. So when he came in with the Mutalisk switch, it was a good idea. You snipe the core, then go for the Mutalisk switch. There were already a few Archons, the Phoenixes were out, he had a few cannons, and he was killing the Spire, he was killing the Lair tech.
He just lost way too much. When the Hydralisks were gone, you could see that Crank immediately moved out, because he's like, well, you just lost your entire army, so even if you reinforce now, you will run out of lava, you won't be able to reinforce, I can just warp in again. And he already saw that there was a Mutalisk switch coming. He started to prepare his Phoenixes, and he hit them in his main base, because he didn't want to show them to Symbol. He had the possibility to go up into the tech for Storm 2. Didn't really need it though, so really solid performance here by Crank, and a little bit weird by Symbol at times. So Axiom-Acer suddenly in the lead.
Yeah, and this is probably a big shock to a lot of fans, because, you know, both of them aren't the best in this matchup, but Symbol is just a player with so much more experience. But Crank was on fire in that game. He did what he needed to do. His build was good. He was prepared for the Mutalisk transition before he even scouted it. He knew it was a possibility. As soon as those Voiders are scouted, you know, he's going to switch to Phoenix or Mutalisk. He's not going to switch to Corruptors, of course, because that wouldn't make sense against no Colossi.
Which is a very solid performance that we saw here by Crank, and a couple of mistakes by Symbol that Crank just completely abused. So Symbol losing the first match is definitely a blow to AZUBU. And they, on the other hand, showed in the past that they have other players that can pick it up and take it for the team.
Patience.
So the question right now is just, what are they going to do? And with Patience, we have a player that I didn't really expect.
I didn't expect him to come out second. I thought maybe we'd see him third or first, not second. But, you know, he definitely showed that he is one of their players that can do well in the Team League. And we talked about this a lot, but the second player has so much time to prepare. They have the map pick, so it's unknown to Crank what map it's going to be on. He knows he's playing Protoss versus Protoss. Really good choice here, I feel, overall. You know, but can Patience really have that preparation he needs?
Patience is just one of those players that you don't really expect in this situation. But the last time that he played, he was up against Seed in the first game. That's the match that he prepared for, the match that he won. So he played the Protoss versus Protoss, and maybe that's exactly the matchup where he's the strongest. We're going to find out. He's going up against another Protoss here. But before we have the match between Crank and Patience, we are going into a 5-minute break at the GSTL. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a few.